Hey there, Max here. I wanted to do a follow-up to my previous indie game pitching video and give a status update on the solo development of Night Shift Galaxy and my progress towards entering early access. Just to clarify what I mean by solo development, like when we conceived of this game, I expected to be the director and programmer collaborating with a half dozen or so other people. But as a solo, I am the director, programmer, lead designer, level designer, illustrator, 3D modeler, technical artist, animator, as well as handling legal, financial, social media, and community matters. And also, today, a video producer. Ah! I've devoted the last 3 months to kind of pre-production, where I'm basically answering all the how questions. How will I redesign the game into something I can make on my own? How will I scale back the technical scope into something I have the time and resources to ship? And how will I author assets at commercial quality and scale, despite only being a hobbyist artist? These questions have touched on literally dozens of features, and to talk through all of it would take all day, but I don't want to just speak in generalities, so I've decided to super deep dive and highlight a single visible detail which is representative of the whole investigation. Specifically, a style change in the way I'm rendering characters. So our original dream for the game was to straight up look like 80s retro anime. Think Macross, Zeta Gundam, Dirty Pair, stuff like that. Painterly backgrounds and line art mecha with solid cell shading and graphic accent shapes. Platinum Games kind of chased this look with Transformers Devastation, but I felt like we could do even better and advance the state of the art and really differentiate ourselves on Steam. So here's some footage of that feature from our pitch deck, realized in the Unreal Engine and demonstrating early progress on three technical art solutions: character outlines, line art strokes, and graphic shading. So let's go through each individually. For the character outlines in general, there's two conventional solutions: post-processing and shells. So post-processing utilizes an edge detection filter that runs over the rendered depth and colored buffers, darkening pixels and a halo around the character. It's basically the same way outlines are computed in Photoshop with some 3D fanciness. The quality is nice, but it kind of just looks like a filter. Plus, it's expensive. Shells, on the other hand, are additional character geometry with dark back faces that are inflated and inverted to show up around and behind the character. This is an old school technique that you can see in games as far back as like Jet Set Radio, and it's really cheap. We went with shells both for performance, but also because they can capture self overlapping better, like when a limb is in front of the torso and we want outlines that's crossing the character. They're also easier to fine tune for special case fix ups. In terms of production costs, shells are more workflow intensive because you can't simply reuse character models for the shell without artifacts due to split normals, inserting gaps, or uneven thickness around corners. I tried to write an automated process to generate shell meshes with smooth normals and use vertex colors as a weight map to hint the shader to thicken certain areas, but it still required testing and fine tuning and added some extra steps to the character pipeline. For the inner line work, we started with just painting textures, but noted how they looked bad close up due to pixelation, as well as far away due to bitmap blurring. So instead, I took a cue from how Unreal renders fonts and converted the illustrated textures into a signed distance field, which can be sampled at different thresholds to get thicker and thinner lines. This gives you a lot of detail close up, kind of like vector art, but also preserves major lines in the distance while completely hiding minor strokes for a really slick level of detail across the whole depth gamut in game. Like with shells, this also requires fine tuning the line work to get a good final result. Lastly, for cell shading, we have another to post process or not to post process dilemma. Because Unreal doesn't expose the option to customize the lighting model in the material editor. Instead, it just slots your shader snippets Madlib style into a shader template with hard coded lighting calculations. So most off the shelf toon shading extensions just use a post process shader to tunify the rendered colors, like applying an Instagram filter. Not only is this expensive, but it's also limited because the color buffer doesn't differentiate lit and unlit pixels, so you have to extract lighting information with inferior approximations. Alternatively, you can download the Unreal Engine source and patch those hard coded calculations, but it's kind of scary in an undocumented black art. However, we went this way on Solar Ash, a game I collaborated on with Heart Machine to create a mixed tune lighting model that combined both hard thresholds and soft shading to realize the game's unique style. So, having experience in that area, I went that route as well. The patch set itself is pretty simple, but they do introduce an ongoing maintenance cost because I have to update them every time the upstream engine code changes to reflect any refactoring or new features from Epic Games. In the context of a funded project with specialists, these costs are super minor in exchange for a market differentiating look that would help sell the game. However, as a solo developer, all these taxes on every step of the character and programming pipeline would make the game impossible to finish, so an alternative was necessary. Like I said in my Chicken Walker mech arc breakdown, I'm seeking good enough solutions rather than ideal ones. So, after variously experimenting, I landed on a simpler character stylization without any outlines where I can mix some of the diffuse character color into the emissive channel to flatten the shading relative to the background, as well as adding a glowing light direction based Fresnel with a hard falloff to add another flattened color element that gives it a graphic look. It's not my personal dream, and it loses the tight marketing hook of the line art style, but I'm satisfied that it's at least tickling the right entertainment centers of the brain and like getting people in the right mood for the like zany action of the game. So I know some people will be let down that we're losing the retro anime look. For one, me, I'm feeling let down. But in a choice between shipping a simpler game versus not shipping at all, I know the right answer. So for early access, this is how the characters are going to look, and I'm pretty juiced. It still looks pretty good. Maybe smarter people than me with more time can find a different way to square this circle, but as I stated up top, this is just one of over a dozen features that I've had to reconsider and make hard decisions about. So instead of waffling forever, I'm just making command choices and not looking back so I can just get early access in your hands. Do note, however, these considerations are definitely still up in the air for the full release, both because a good early access run might open up new funding opportunities to commission art assets, as well as locking down the engine version for release will open up more freedom to just go crazy with patches. It'll all just depend on what possibilities and priorities the response to early access reveals. All of that said, do I have an early access date to announce? Unfortunately, no. I wanted to get it out before the end of the year, but I'm just now transitioning from asking how to make the game to actually making the game and measuring my real productivity to make confident estimates. Also, and like not to fish for sympathy or whatever, but I weathered a hard drive crash crisis and a change in my finances recently, neither of which threatened to tank the project, but they did add more uncertainty to everything. But production is now really happening, it's speeding up, and it should only go faster from here. So, in the meantime, definitely wishlist, join the Discord, and keep spreading the word. Thanks for listening. I love making this game. I want y'all to play it because you're going to love it. I love y'all. Till next time, adios.